Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 18, presented by Nicolay Law. Before we get started, as always, a friendly reminder to follow us on all socials, Instagram, X, YouTube, at the Tundra GB. Like and subscribe over there on YouTube. We appreciate everybody for listening and following along. We're here to dissect one of the most humiliating, is that a fair word, John, to use, games that I've seen for the Green Bay Packers in my 7 years covering the team. You've been around the team much longer. I'd be interested to get your thoughts. But just a manhandling of the Green Bay Packers by the Baltimore Ravens. There's no more appropriate place to start when breaking this one down than King Henry, the future Hall of Fame running back, running roughshod on the Green Bay Packers. 53 carries for the Ravens, 307 yards. Henry had 36 for 216 and 4 touchdowns. Matt LaFluer called his run defense baffling, in quotation marks. Missed assignments, misalignments. John, you participated in the ground game for your entire career. Contextualize how bad what we saw yesterday was.
It was humbling. I would call it humbling for the Green Bay Packers to face a team that had a losing record coming into Lambeau Field and really worked you on one side of the ball. And they did that from the first drive all the way through completion of that football game. When you rush for 307 yards, I mean, you could say 207 yards. They put a C note on top of that. When you rush for 307 yards, you are just owning the other side of the line of scrimmage. And that's what the Baltimore Ravens did to the Packers yesterday. I would say it was a lot of different things, but most importantly, it was that the defense, who anticipated, and Matt LaFleur even admitted it, anticipated Baltimore to run the football, did not know how to stop Baltimore from running the football. I saw guys shy to make contact. I saw guys sticking to blocks. I saw guys out of their gaps. It was a combination of errors on nearly every play, to the point where you wonder, what is this defense putting out there for other teams to see going into the playoffs? They're a 7 seed. They're going to the playoffs. That is not arguable. Now, what are they going to do when they get there? Are they going to get embarrassed like they were in this game? Or are they going to step up, make the corrections, and play the way that we know this defense can play?
Couple notable quotes pertaining to those points from the locker room postgame. Evan Williams said, if you give up 300 yards on the ground, it's not because you're getting out-schemed. They brought a style of play, and I'm paraphrasing the rest of this quote. They brought a style of play that we didn't, is basically what he said. Edgerrin Cooper said it was embarrassing. Matt LaFleur, like you said, called it humbling. And I'm going to read you my favorite quote from Javon Bullard in the locker room postgame. And I can swear on here, so I'm going to let it rip. Javon Bullard, we couldn't stop the fucking run. Point blank, period. And we got to fix that shit tomorrow if we want to go past the wild card game in the playoffs. If we don't, we'll be sitting our ass right back in Green Bay. That sums it up pretty appropriately, John, don't you think?
Yeah, pretty much. And that's kind of what I was just alluding to right there, is when you put that on film, let alone what you had put out the last 2 times that you had played the Chicago Bears and letting them run for 137 and over 150 in 2 games. And it was almost as if the Green Bay Packers just thought, hey, if we go out here and we do our job, they'll get some rushing yards, but no, Derrick Henry and that Baltimore Ravens offensive line, that's different. And they were committed to the run game. They were committed to running throughout, and they pushed them around. They pushed them around up front, and when they had opportunities to make tackles and get in the backfield, I'll put it to you this way. I saw one play where Carrington Valentine, the ball was bouncing to the outside. He's the contained defender, and instead of coming up, and this is the way you stop King Henry. You got to hit him at the line of scrimmage and make him turn one way or the other. You got to make him turn his shoulders so they're not absolutely 90 degrees going north and south. You got to get him facing a sideline so that people can recover. And when he falls down to the side. If you don't turn his shoulders by attacking the outside leg or attacking the end of the line of scrimmage, you're going to get him running downhill. And Carrington Valentine caught that King Henry stiff arm that we're used to seeing.
He went flying.
And that's all she wrote. I saw that multiple times in yesterday's game. It was concerning to me because I'm starting to get the feel that this Packers team that played so many really big-time games in a row, I wouldn't say they came out flat because they still played hard, but they didn't play disciplined whatsoever. And when they got punched in the mouth, it's almost like they were just trying to not take the punches versus punch back.
I'm glad you brought up Derrick Henry after contact because a couple telling numbers that I wanted to throw out there. The Ravens averaged 2.17 yards before contact per rush last night. 2.17 yards on average before they were touched per rush. If you were to rank that against the team ranks this season, that would rank first. I forget who it was, but I think the highest yards before contact per rush this season is 2.1. Ravens are at 2.17. They had 3.62 yards after contact per rush. That would also rank first in the NFL this season among the team averages. Now, I understand it's just one game, but my point is the Ravens weren't just good after contact. They were great before contact too. So while Derrick Henry and Mitchell ran well, that offensive line was playing bully ball up front. Quick side note. If the Packers have the money in free agency, their number one priority needs to be Tyler Linderbaum to be their next starting center. We don't need to dive into that right now. That was just a spare thought I had. Second time since 1978, a team has run for more than 300 yards against the Packers. Only the second. Matt LaFluer said today, I can't remember the last time I saw 300 rushing yards in a game. Well, the last time came 3 years ago. Philadelphia Eagles versus the Green Bay Packers. So both times in Packers history since 1978 that someone's rushed for 300 against them have come in the last 4 years now. That's enough for the run defense, though. We know that's the reason they lost the game. I want to talk about Malik Willis, John.
Wow.
Whoo, boy. That guy is going to get paid by the Arizona Cardinals or the Las Vegas Raiders or the New York Jets or the Miami Dolphins, and he's going to deserve it. You can make the argument he's the best backup quarterback in the league. He's going to get a chance to at least be a starter somewhere else, and he deserves every bit of it. We'll get into this nonsensical thought later that he's better than Jordan Love. I want to save that for later. But what Malik Willis has done, not just last night, but in almost every appearance he's made for the Packers, has been nothing short of remarkable after how his time in Tennessee ended, and given the fact the Packers only gave up a 7th-round pick to get him last year.
You know what's outstanding about this guy, Matt, is when he came in last year in reserve for Jordan Love early in the season, you knew it was going to be a truncated game plan because he had only been around for, 10 days before he'd made his first start. And they ran the football, and he was a big part of that running game. And as he has been the backup going forward after those first 2 games against Tennessee and Indianapolis, you've seen Matt LaFleur give him opportunities to throw the football down the field, culminating in last night. Just a spectacular performance out of him, both with his arm and with his leg. He no longer looks like a one-dimensional quarterback. He no longer looks like a running back that can throw. He looks like a quarterback that can run. And that is the type of guy that goes out and has suitors in free agency. And you know what? When we bring guys in like this and they work their tails off, I am nothing but happy when I see them get their flowers.
Yeah, it's interesting because when he first came here from Tennessee, you thought, okay, this is a running quarterback. They can use him in certain packages. Matt LaFleur said, I forget if it was last night or today when we talked to him this afternoon, he said, Malik Willis can make any throw. I'd put him up against anybody. This is a guy who has proven he can create on the run. He can run himself. I mean, he had 2 rushing touchdowns on keepers. He can make some really impressive throws. Now, when they first played him against the Colts and Titans last year, it was very limited sample size, understandably so, because he had only been in the offense for 3 weeks. So they were doing a lot of fancy stuff in the run game, maybe having him throw it a couple times. I think against the Jaguars last year, he had the one throw to Jaden Reed.
Yeah, really nice pass set up late in the game off of play action.
Yeah, they're taking the reins off of him. And the first 2 passes of the game, the dime in a bucket to Romeo Doubs, and then the anticipation dart across the middle to Christian Watson, Like, that's what a starting quarterback does. He's just not the starting quarterback of this team,
Yeah,
but he looks like a starting quarterback.
And then later in the game, he threw a really nice out route. These were plays in succession. He threw a really nice out route to Matthew Golden. Then he hit Christian Watson over the middle for a huge play while on the move. And then he dropped another one to Bo Melton. 3 different receivers, 3 phenomenal throws, all within the same drive. And then he finished that drive with a rushing touchdown. So, man, he's showing that he's got a package that, given the right scheme and given the right play caller and teammates around him, he can be a very successful quarterback in this league.
18 for 21, 288, 1 touchdown, 9 carries, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Can I also say those 3 incompletions, I consider those all drops. All 3 of them. I consider them all drops.
Yeah, I forget what the second and third ones were. I know the first one was a drop because it ended that streak of 11 straight to start the game. That was a drop by Chris Brooks. I can't remember off the top of my head what the other 2 were. But nonetheless, very impressive showing from Malik Willis. And he might start again on Sunday, assuming that's when the game is. By the time you're listening to this, we will know what time the Packers game is and what day it is. I think they announced that all tonight. But
I'd be willing to bet it's a 12 o'clock game on Sunday.
Yeah, I would bet my life savings on that. There's nothing at stake in this game. Malik Willis might start again, so you might get one more chance to see him in a Packer uniform. We'll get into all the talk later about which guys might get rested. Should the Packers rest guys? That'll be later in the show. One more thing I wanted to touch on in this first segment, John, is the injuries. We got to update the injury list. I know there weren't any Micah Parsons type, Tucker Kraft type guys to go down yesterday, but the Packers can't afford to have anybody go down right now. Zane Anderson carted off with an ankle injury, didn't return. Nate Hobbs left with a knee injury, didn't return. Jordan Riley, season-ending Achilles. Kamal Hadden, season-ending, I don't know if it was a leg or ankle, his leg snapped. Whatever it was, he's out for the year. That one was a gruesome one to watch. And then Dontavian Wicks, concussion, did not return. The Packers are dropping like flies. And I don't know if there's anything training-wise or build-up-wise that they can do about it. But you add those guys, some important depth pieces to the Parsons, Kraft, Jenkins, Wyatt. Zach Toms missed 2 games with a knee injury. Evan Williams is coming back from a sprained MCL. Jordan Love still in the protocol. Malik Willis aggravated his throwing shoulder. And then Josh Jacobs has been hurt pretty much the entire second half of the season, was very limited yesterday by design. Can he get fresh for the playoffs? So just the Packers medical tent is overflowing right now. And that's why, as we'll get into later, I think you got to rest guys just so you're not tempting the injury gods anymore in week 18.
Yeah. And at the same time, you want to get a little bit of mojo going for the postseason. You want to get a little bit of flow. But I think at this point in time, we're not talking about a hamstring or a calf or, an AC sprain. We're not talking about a stinger. We're not talking about one of those little ones that you could potentially go out there and play through. We are talking about real deal injuries, multiple ACLs, multiple bone fractures, multiple Achilles throughout the last several weeks. And because of that, yeah, I would agree with you. The Packers, if they want to have any chance at making any noise in the postseason, they're going to have to rest just about everybody. And yet you got to go out there and dress, what is it now, 46, 47 guys? What are they allowed to dress these days?
48, I think.
48 guys?
I think that's what it is.
Okay, well, you got to find a way to dress 48 guys for Sunday's game, which is going to be a very difficult task. And you'll have some guys that dress, but then they'll be in reserve roles, even though they're normally starter roles. But this Packers team needs to get some bit of health going within the next 2 weeks if they want to have any type of hope at the postseason.
And just very quickly, the Jordan Riley one, he made a couple nice plays in the Bears game. Obviously, he's not a household name. They picked him up off, I believe, the Giants practice squad not too long ago. But especially on the interior defensive line and the defensive line as a whole, where you're already without Micah Parsons and Devontae Wyatt for the rest of the season, you can't afford to lose any more bodies because your best bet at keeping guys like Colby Wooden, Carl Brooks, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness fresh is being able to rotate some guys in. I know Riley doesn't play the edge, but it's just another body to go down that they need. So Packers have some things to figure out both on the field and in the injury room coming up this week as they go to Minnesota to face the Vikings in about as meaningless of a Week 18 game as you can get. The Vikings are already eliminated. The Packers have already clinched the number 7 seed for the third consecutive year. Still to be determined who they face. I don't think that can be determined tonight, but it's probably, according to the odds, going to be the Bears or the Eagles. We can get into later who the Packers would rather see, who you would rather see. But it's an interesting mood around the Green Bay Packers right now because they're in the playoffs, but they've lost 3 in a row. If they lose 4 in a row, what's going to be the mood going into Chicago or Philly? I'm interested to get your thoughts, interested to hear everyone else's thoughts. We'll discuss that and much more after the break. You're listening to The Tundra.
Hey guys, picture this. You're heading home from your long day at work and you're probably listening to this very podcast when your significant other gives you a call and says, hey, can you stop for some milk at the grocery store? And as you're pulling out from the grocery store, boom, you get hit in the back end, you're rear-ended. Well, listen, my first call would be to Nicolay Law because they know this moment all too well. And there's nobody else you should trust in that situation. From car crashes to wrongful death cases, they've helped thousands of Midwesterners pick up their pieces. And when it matters most, you want the lawyer that you trust in your corner. One of the many great things about Nicolay Law is they don't get paid unless you win. So if you or a loved one is ever hurt, call Nicolay Law because no one should have to face hard times alone. Visit nicolaylaw.com today or call 1-855-NICOLAY.
Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 18. Okay, John, we know the Packers have stumbled to the finish line, or I should say are stumbling to the finish line in the regular season, but they're in the playoffs. I'm going to pose a simple question to you. What is your confidence level in the current iteration of the Green Bay Packers as they fall forward into these NFL playoffs as the number 7 seed?
Well, I'd like to know our opponent first and foremost, and I'd like to know how many guys are able to play in that playoff game and what their availability is. If you tell me some of these key components, some of these key players come back healthy and come back ready to go, is Zach Tom ready to go, right? I think that's an important one for the Packers offense. Jordan Love, you got to assume he's going to get out of pro call at some point in time soon. And how good is he ready to go? The wide receivers, they've been dealing with so much. And in the last week, that illness that's been just crushing the locker room and guys missing practices and then not feeling great for the game. I think it's fair to say if the Packers do get a matchup with the Chicago Bears, we just saw them go down there a couple weeks ago and perform well for the majority of that football game. So if they go down to Chicago, I think they have a good shot to come away with a victory. If they go to Philadelphia, I think it becomes a little more difficult. And if they have to play one of the teams on the West Coast, watch out because those teams are humming right now. So where's my confidence lie with the Green Bay Packers? Not great after losing 3 in a row, 2 of which they haven't punted in. And, I would almost seem to think that if whatever can happen will happen in today's NFL. So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I think it's also important to acknowledge something in this what have you done for me lately league, that the defense, sans Micah Parsons, sans Devontae Wyatt, the same defense we are criticizing for their performance against the Ravens, held firm for about 57 minutes against the Chicago Bears. And it could be that same Chicago Bears team that they play here in a matter of 2 weeks. So I don't think all hope is lost. But what I will say regarding my 30,000 foot view on the state of the Green Bay Packers right now, I think the defense is concerning, and not just because of what we saw yesterday. Over the stretch run, over a big sample size, not having Micah Parsons, not having Devontae Wyatt is not a great recipe. And John, you know this more than anyone. What happens when your pass rush doesn't get home as quick? And what happens when you don't have Micah Parsons? Your back end is going to have to cover for longer. Do you have faith in that cornerback duo of Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon to do what they need to do in a win or go home playoff game to make up for a lackluster pass rush? Because I don't, at least not from what we've seen lately. And
not because they can't fit a role, but because their role is so expanded now. And what I mean by that is Jeff Hafley has to call so many different defensive packages in order to get pressure onto quarterbacks. And if he sits back, they don't get any pressure on the quarterback and they can run with the football. Jeff Hafley's trying to decide, who do I help more? Do I help the cornerbacks more, or do I help the defensive line more and try and stimulate pressure? That's not a good recipe to be in when you're trying to help both sides of the pendulum here on the Packers defense, because at some point in time, somebody has to wear the sombrero, somebody has to carry that lunch pail. And right now, neither side really is.
Yeah. And then look, we got to look at all three phases when it comes to the playoffs for the Packers, especially because in some recent playoff games, the special teams have faltered as well. And historically, Packer fans look at special teams and say they're always going to fail us at some point, whether that's accurate or not. Do you feel confident in the special teams right now? I mean, there are coverage units on kickoff and punt, even though they don't really punt anymore, but they still find ways to lose those games. Quick tangent, that stat, Abe Jaroszewski, we read it, I think, last episode. I'm going to update it. There have been, I think, 11 games this season where a team hasn't punted. I think it's up to that now. The Packers have 3 of them. They're 0-3. Rest of the league is 8-0. That tweet was put out December 20th, so last week. So I need to check if any of the games today, as we record this on Sunday night, or the Christmas Day games, or obviously the game yesterday, the Packers didn't punt and still lost, but that stat might need to be updated. The point is, the Packers haven't punted in 3 games this season, and they're 0-3 in those games. It's just a wild, wild stat. But my point is, all 3 phases for the Packers, offense, you feel the best about. But after this absence, is Jordan Love able to come back and lead a shootout win if he needs to? I think he can. But their workhorse running back, their feature running back, is he going to be able to be the road grader that he can be when fully healthy? I think there are questions there, questions with the offensive line. Special teams is always a question mark, no matter how well they're playing. And the defense is the biggest question mark just because of who they don't have. So that's why I say, yes, I agree with you in that it's fathomable to imagine the Packers going to Chicago and winning a playoff game. I think that's the only team in the first round I could realistically see them beating. But a run beyond that, I just don't see it right now.
And when you mentioned Josh Jacobs, I do wonder, because he injured the knee, and the big injury on the knee, the death blow to the knee, happened in New York. Matt, that was several weeks ago now. That had to be 6 games ago that he had to hit to the knee. I know he had a setback in Denver, maybe another setback somewhere in there. So you just got to wonder, is he ever going to get back to being healthy this year, 100% healthy, or close to 100% healthy? We know he was effective in Denver even after suffering that setback early in the football game, but Josh Jacobs, he didn't even hardly play in this past game against the Baltimore Ravens. Some of that's by design, but some of that's got to be because he's still really lingering with that injury.
Yeah, and he has said to us the only way it's going to actually go away is resting it in the offseason. He's just battling through right now, and it obviously all stems from that Week 11 game at MetLife when he hurt his knee on, I think, the second play of the game. It's his left knee, and he's just been battling through it. And as you said, aggravated against Denver. The plan going into last night was to have him be very limited, and kind of the way the game transpired made him be even more limited. I think he played 13 of 47 snaps on offense, something like that. I looked at the number earlier, but 4 carries for 3 yards. You're going to need more than that out of Josh Jacobs, and I think they expect more from him in the playoffs. They're going to put more on his shoulders in the playoffs. Guys like him, you will never, ever doubt that they're going to try and tough it out as much as they can when it comes to the playoffs, but we'll get into it a little bit later. I think there's no way you play him on Sunday against the Vikings, but look, I had someone stop me when I was at Lambeau Field today, and you'll see where I'm going with this. I took my mom, who's in town, my lovely mother, I took her on a tour of Lambeau Field. So we're walking through the Hall of Fame, and someone stops me because he recognized me, and he says, "You know what? This season reminds me of of the 2010 season, kind of how we limped into the playoffs. Are these two seasons alike as someone who was on that team, or are they not comparable?
I don't think they're comparable at this point in time. We did have a lot of injuries. We had a lot of guys on IR, but the impact players that are on IR now. We played the second half of the Super Bowl without Charles Woodson, who was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. They're playing several games without Micah Parsons, who is that piece to the puzzle for them. You look on the offensive side, Tucker Kraft, yeah, I guess you could say Jermichael Finley. We lost him early in the football season, so that's maybe tit for tat. But the one thing that I'm seeing out of this Packer team right now is they're playing some of their worst football at the end of the year. We might have limped a little bit into the playoffs, but we played a great game against the New York Giants. We played a great game without Aaron Rodgers against the New England Patriots in Foxborough, even though we came up with a loss. And then we finished the deal against the Chicago Bears at home to make it into the playoffs. So I think that's the different side of things, is that Packer team was playing up at the end of the season. They were getting healthy, they were getting players back, and they were playing up, versus this team right now. They've been on a tough stretch. We talked about that run of games, starting with Minnesota, going through Chicago Bears, and then culminating with this game with a team that had to have it to force themselves an opportunity at a playoff berth in Week 18 in the Baltimore Ravens. And the Packers couldn't sustain that type of energy for that many games in a row. And there couldn't be something said about the Packers losing that game in Chicago, the way that they lost it after everything they put into it, and just not being able to pull in the reserves for energy for this one.
Yeah, and I posed the question to Matt LaFluer last night if he thought him and his staff did a good enough job of getting the locker room back up for this game against the Ravens. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I think this is true. The Denver game and the Chicago game are absolute gut punches for different reasons. Denver game, you lose Christian Watson for the game, and then Micah Parsons, and then you lose a 9-point lead. That's a gut punch. The Parsons lost more so than losing the actual game. And then the way they lost in Chicago, not necessarily that they lost, but the way they lost is another gut punch. So from that perspective, the Packers emotionally, mentally, physically have been through the ringer the last 2 weeks entering this game against the Ravens, and they just seem deflated. I mean, not on offense, but they just seem deflated and bullied around on defense. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it raises the question, can the Packers get off the mat? They are knocked down. They are out cold on the mat right now. Can they get back up in 2 weeks' time to muster up a respectable playoff performance and potentially even win a game, or maybe more? Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. Do they have the proper guys in that locker room? Matt LaFleur seems to think so. But can he and his staff gather the guys, prove that this culture is one of resilience, and show that these last 3 weeks aren't going to be the ultimate downfall of this year's team?
Yeah, and it's got to be through play on the field between the whistles, right? This team has plenty of want to. They have plenty of fight. You don't see them backing down after the plays. You see the physicality there throughout the game, but it's got to be these guys. Somebody making a big play. You know, X had a couple opportunities in the last 3 games, and these 3 losses, I think 3 times he had his hands on football to be able to take it away and create a turnover, unable to do that, right? How many red zone trips did they have that they were unsuccessful in scoring? They finally solved some of those woes this past week against the Ravens, and it was the defense that couldn't keep their level of play. Complementary football is addicting, and it's a wave of momentum that this Packer team needs to find, and they're probably going to have to wait until the playoffs to try and find it.
Yeah, because they're probably not going to have their full complement of guys to play that complementary football against the Vikings, if I had to guess. John, I know we talked about this at length earlier this year, but I think it's worth revisiting now with the playoffs on the horizon, with the bulk of the regular season in the rear view. Can't really judge really anybody if they play their backups in a meaningless Week 18 game with nothing really on the line. In your opinion, I'm asking John Kuhn's opinion, and what matters more than our opinions is what Ed Policy thinks. But I think people might want to hear our opinions from being around this team every day. Do you think, based on what we've seen, what we just talked about, that Matt LaFleur has done enough to earn an extension already? Or does he still have to prove something? Is it winning one playoff game, or is it winning two playoff games? Or could he still lose, but it's the fashion in which they lose and get an extension? What is your view on the future of Matt LaFleur right now? And maybe do injuries buy him a second? No, I shouldn't say second contract. It would probably be a third contract at this point. What's your view on that whole situation?
That's a very interesting question, because as we came into the season, I remember there was a lot of speculation as to when Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst would get their extensions. And the comment was, I don't know if it was made or if it was kind of assumed, that Ed Policy wasn't going to make a contract extension before the start of this season. My claim to that is always why. Why would you extend guys 2 years out instead of 1 year out? Because then the next one you could do 3 years out. And why do that? Why make a decision before you actually have to? But now that you roll out of this season and you enter into the last year of Matt LaFleur's contract, you do have to put everything in context. And if you look at this thing macroscopically, you can say Matt LaFleur has done an unbelievable job as a head coach of the Green Bay Packers. You could also macroscopically say, well, Matt LaFleur in the last 4 years has done nothing but get 7 seeds. He has not been able to win a division. Is that our standard in Green Bay? And then you can look at it microscopically this year, when we all said this was the best roster, top to bottom, that Matt LaFleur has ever had, and say, well, how much of that roster actually finished the season for him? I feel like that's nearly an impossible question for any of us to truly answer, to truly look at. The one thing I know is this Packers team for the last 4 years has been closer to missing the playoffs than it has been to making a Super Bowl. Do you put more of that on injuries, or do you put more on that as the team played on the field this year? With Micah Parsons, they were the 2 seed. Also with Micah Parsons, they lost games to Carolina at home, to Philly at home, to Cleveland on the road. And all 3 of those games, the defense played really good. So it was the offensive side of the ball that didn't carry their weight. You could literally teeter this thing back and forth the whole time. I think this is right down the middle.
Yeah, I will say defense couldn't stop the run against Carolina, but I get what you're saying.
Would they allow 13 points?
16. I know it wasn't
points.
the points. It was more allowing Carolina to control the game on the ground, but I digress. Look, gun to my head, if it was up to me, which it's obviously not, and that's probably good for Packer fans for a wide variety of reasons. Gun to my head, you ask me, do you give Matt LaFleur an extension or not? Right now, I say yes, you do. But it might be a tough decision for Ed Policy. Like you said, a lot of things to consider. What role do injuries play in a head coach's evaluation? What role does overall team success play in a head coach's evaluation? Success of the offense? Is he evaluated on success of the defense and special teams? How is he evaluated on hiring decisions with the coaches he surrounded himself with? In Green Bay, John, you and I both know this. You played for this team for a decade. There is a greater expectation here to win. So while making the playoffs would be great for a lot of teams in this league, and if Matt LaFleur was fired, there would be teams knocking at his door to pick him up within 2 seconds. The stagnancy of this organization, if that's what Ed Policy thinks is happening, could reflect poorly on him as the leader, as the CEO of the team. Now, could Ed Policy say, Matt LaFleur gives us the best chance to win? He's an offensive wizard. Get a couple of these guys back healthy. We could have easily won the Super Bowl this year. We're going to be contending for it next year. Yeah, he could say that, and I wouldn't blame him at all for that. But could Ed Policy also say, I think this relationship has run its course. It's gotten a little stale. We've reached our peak with LaFleur. He's a great offensive mind, but maybe we think him as a CEO type guy to really will this team over the top. We could get better there. He could say that too. I don't know what Ed Policy's thinking. I haven't talked to him. All I'm saying is that if it were up to me right now, and if I had to make a decision, LaFleur would get an extension. But things could get complicated for Ed Policy, especially if they lose in the first round. So the reason we talk about this is not to belabor the point of LaFleur's job. It's because Ed Policy opened the door for us to have this discussion based on what he told us before the season started. And we have almost a full season of evidence to go off of when weighing a very major topic. And that's the future of the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. So
look, I'll say it like this. for coaches, it's very similar to players. The player wants to get paid for what they achieved on the field, their accomplishments. A coach in Matt LaFluer is going to look there and say, hey, I'm tied for the second most wins through my first 7 seasons with any coach in NFL history. The second most wins in my first 7 seasons as all the coaches that have ever coached in the National Football League. That's great. But now you start to look forward and you acknowledge that teams, they pay for the potential of what you can do and what you can achieve. And when you start talking about Matt LaFleur and this team, the window is open now. The window is open when they come back next year and they have Micah Parsons back to play the season, Tucker Kraft back to play the season, Jordan Love at full health to play the season. You will have to acknowledge Devontae Wyatt back to play the season. You will have to acknowledge it. That roster is a roster whose window is open to make a Super Bowl run. Not a 7 seed, not a playoff berth, but win the division and a Super Bowl run. Do you see him as the guy that will lead that group of players to that final finish line? And that is the only way that you can give him an extension.
And that's why they pay Ed Policy the big bucks to make those decisions. And the future of Brian Gutekunst, although I don't think that's up for debate as much as LaFleur's is. I could be wrong. Who knows? All right. I don't know how much we're going to talk about the actual game itself, the X's and O's. Probably not much in this next segment. But there are still a couple things to discuss as we head into the final week of the regular season and look ahead to potential playoff matchups for the Green Bay Packers as they go on the road. So stick with us. You're listening to The Tundra. Welcome back to The Tundra, episode 18. This segment is brought to you by our good friends at Potawatomi Sportsbook. Hey, sports bettors, whether you're new to the game or can knock out 16-leg parlays with the best of them, the premier sportsbook you want is smack dab in the heart of Milwaukee. It's the Potawatomi Sportsbook. You know what it is. The best hospitality. I told you on last week's show about how they got me a room on my way down to Chicago. They've treated John and I with the utmost respect, hospitality, accommodations every time we go down there for different stuff. And not only are there over 90 sports betting kiosks, there's all-star dining, first-class drinks, a giant video wall, and more. It's nothing short of awesome. Potawatomi Sportsbook, bet above the rest. John, I want to try and get through this final segment without mentioning a single X and O from the Packers-Vikings game because I'm not sure any one of our listeners cares about that.
All right.
What they care, go ahead.
So let's get you to shave the mustache because we've now gone on a slide, and that was only for good luck while we were on that run. So let's get you to shave the mustache.
No, not good luck. It's for my own personal satisfaction in my look, not for anything Packers related. I don't know if you know this, John.
What can the Packers, do to turn it around? We need to change the mojo, and I think it starts with the mustache.
What do you mean we need to change the mojo? I don't need to do anything.
See, and that's where I'm still torn on you, Matt.
You think I'm a Packers fan who's like trying to will something with this mustache?
Wouldn't it behoove you for the Packers to go on a bit of a run here, win themselves a couple playoff games?
I would love to cover a Super Bowl.
Get some energy going.
It's on my bucket list. Yeah.
Make the most. If the Packers, would you say this? If the Packers would make a run to the Super Bowl, would this be the most shocking run to a Super Bowl that you could ever remember?
What other Super Bowl runs do I have to remember? You're saying in the league as a whole or just from teams I cover?
As a whole.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to think back. It would be pretty surprising for sure. It would be, honestly, that's the best story, John, is if the Packers go on a run to the Super Bowl.
I think that's the territory. That's the territory they are in right now, Matt. 3 weeks ago, this team was a 2 seed. It had Micah Parsons still, and we were talking about serious Super Bowl contention. Who in the NFC did you put up there to compete with them? And at that time, 3 weeks ago, we only put one team up there with them. That was the LA Rams in the NFC side. We thought the Packers had it all. From then to where we are right now, the story has completely changed on this team. That's where expectations come in. And a lot of that has to do with injuries and the players that are no longer here on this team. Some of it has to do with what we've seen on the field in each of the last 3 weeks. And now, if the Packers do go on a run in the playoffs, it would be one of the more surprising runs that we have seen in the NFL.
Absolutely. They're playing with a little bit of house money. Not all house money, but a little bit. I'm intrigued to see what they do here in the playoffs. I love covering playoff games. So you're not going to get me to bash on wanting the Packers to lose. It would be in my best interest to cover a Super Bowl, but I don't root for the team as a fan. I root for the stories, and you know that, John. As we look ahead to this Week 18 game, I think the most pertinent thing we have to discuss is who's going to play and who's not. Matt LaFluer told us today on Sunday afternoon that he hasn't made any final decisions on resting guys versus playing starters. They've had preliminary conversations, and I asked him specifically, Josh Jacobs isn't going to play, right? You got to at least get him healthy and fresh for the playoffs. And he said, I'll let you guys know when we make a decision. He didn't want to tell us anything publicly before he talks with his players, which I can respect. Here's my thing, John. Like I said earlier, I just think you're tempting the injury gods who have already been cruel to the Packers this year a little too much if you play starters. So I think they rest them, but there are a couple schools of thought here, and I'm interested for your thoughts. Detroit, 2021 regular season finale. You sit some key players second half of that game, Aaron Rodgers included. You lose 37-30, lay an egg in the divisional round against the 49ers. But then last year, you go out there and you play Christian Watson. And granted, and in that Detroit game, I should add, they had the number 1 seed already locked up. Last year against Chicago, they didn't have a seed locked up, but I think they were either going to be the 6 or the 7. They had a road wildcard game clinched. You play Watson, you play Love. Both get hurt. Jordan Love, obviously, I think it was a funny bone thing. It was his shoulder. I still don't know if it was 100% against the Eagles. Watson obviously tears his ACL. And Matt LaFleur mentioned that today when discussing, okay, well, there's a school of thought that you shouldn't play guys. But like you mentioned earlier, John, isn't there something to be said, at least for getting some positive momentum and good vibes going into the postseason instead of entering the playoffs on potentially a 4-game losing streak?
If I'm Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur, I don't even know if this is possible, but I'm elevating all 16 guys from the practice squad. I'm elevating that sheet that we get before the game is going to be this long. I'm elevating all 16. I'm not even dressing Jordan Love or Malik Willis. Clayton Tune is going in there and playing the entire ball game. And then
who's the backup quarterback then if Clayton Tune gets hurt?
Who was it this past week if Clayton Tune got hurt? It was Jaden Reed and Josh Jacobs. Yeah. Okay,
but so what if neither of them are playing?
Do you know who I'm going to have be the backup quarterback? It's going to be Bo Melton, because you know what? He does everything else. He plays corner. He plays wide receiver. He plays on every special team. I'm going to have Bo Melton be the backup quarterback. Clayton Tune's going to start this thing, and I'm going to rest 21 guys. 21 of my starters I'm going to rest in this game because I'm going to elevate all 16. I'm not messing around. This is not a Packer team with the 1 seed. The Packers have one chance and one chance only to make any noise in the playoffs. They're locked into the 7 seed. They can't get the 6th. It doesn't matter what they do in this game. I'm treating it like a preseason game. I might even let Adam Stenavich call the plays in this football game.
Oh, wow.
And go out there. Absolutely.
You're really going to extremes.
No, that's what I'm doing in this, because the Packers have one chance and one chance only. And it's A, that they get healthier, and B, are able to flip a switch. You can only control what you can control. And the only thing you can control this week is that you get healthier. I'm sitting everybody I can.
Yeah, I don't know if you sit. Okay, that's fair. Everybody you can. I think that's an important end to that phrase. Everybody you can.
I don't know if you can elevate 16 guys, but if you can, I would. If you could, I would. Why not?
You can only elevate 2 per week, John.
Well, then you only elevate 2. Okay.
Right. So I do think that they have to rest their most important guys, as many as they can afford to, as many as they can legally.
So that would be 7.
Rest.
That would be 7 that they can legally rest.
Yeah, I think that's.
Should we pick them? Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love.
Okay, hold on.
Christian
Let me write
Watson.
these down. Yep. Zach Tom.
Edgerrin Cooper. Zach Tom.
So 9, 10,
Xavier McKinney.
8. I mean, you could make a case for a lot of guys.
I was just trying to pick the 7 that I want to make sure
9,
nothing happens
10,
to them.
8. You said 56 and 29?
Yeah.
Or
how many is that?
Or, John, what you can do is just play them for a series, get their feet wet like they do in the preseason, and then rest them. Or you just don't play him at all.
No, the ones, if you can sit 7 guys, I'm sitting the 7 most indispensable guys that we have, right?
So
and I think
Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs,
we pretty much,
Christian Watson, Edgerrin Cooper, Xavier McKinney. We need 2 more.
2 more. This is when it starts getting serious.
Zach Tom's one of them to get that knee right.
Yep. And now it's at a tough spot picking this last one. Probably, I guess, still Rashawn Gary.
Sure. Do you sit Evan Williams?
You don't believe it. You see.
Well, I'm thinking
Williams.
I'm
sitting Evan Williams.
Evan Williams might not be in that top 7. He's close to it if he's not.
Well,
but he's coming off a sprained MCL.
That's why I threw him in that
Just
list.
Just make sure that thing's right for the playoffs, especially John, because I mean you could move Javon Bullard back there, but he's playing well in the nickel, especially because Zane Anderson's your next option there, and he's hurt now too. So sit Evan Williams.
Okay, so we picked the 7 that we are going to sit. Now, what you do is you just put everybody on the back end of that depth chart that you get the little flip card. They all start. You start from the left side, right?
Use Malik Willis and Keyshawn Nixon and all these other guys and Jaden Reed only in case of emergency. Only if the other guys get hurt.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm all right. So we're going to be on the sideline coaching the team this week. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting up to Minnesota. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick, John, before we get out of here is this notion among the fan base. And I think it's relevant this week because Jordan Love, although he has yet to clear concussion protocol, will be healthy, I'm assuming, at some point this week. And healthy enough to play. Malik Willis, obviously been great in his fill-in time. There is a section of the fan base, and I understand that sometimes it's unhealthy and not, responsible to just look in the Twitter replies and take that as gospel or project whatever the Twitter people are saying on a platform like this. But I do think I've seen it a lot, that some people think Malik Willis is better than Jordan Love, and Matt LaFluer vehemently shot that down today. With all due respect to Malik Willis, he said, who's been great, Jordan Love's our franchise quarterback for a reason. I'm paraphrasing. He said he wants to squash any notion that Malik Willis gives them a better chance to win than Jordan Love. I think people forget that Jordan Love was 3rd in the MVP odds going into that Denver game. And I've seen other people say this online, and they're right. It's hard to scout for a backup quarterback. Now, Malik Willis has been great, but Malik Willis for a full season may not look like Malik Willis in spurts that we've seen. So if both quarterbacks are healthy this week, you might still see Malik Willis start. But if they're going into the playoffs, I can't believe I'm saying this to some of the fan base who might think otherwise, there is no debate about who is starting a playoff game if both guys are healthy. And I shouldn't even need to say that. With all due respect to the intelligence of some of these fans.
There is no debate on who the franchise quarterback is, and there's no debate on who you start if they're both 100% healthy or even close to 100% healthy. But I will say this, we don't know where Malik Willis is in his career trajectory right now. And quite frankly, if anybody was ever going to be able to prepare for Malik Willis, it was this past week. It was the Baltimore Ravens. What they saw in the second half at Chicago and what they have seen out of Malik Willis in the last 2 years, they should have had they should have had a better game plan than what they did, or that's the best game plan than what they can come up for Malik Willis in this offense. And Malik Willis had one of the best games we saw all year at the quarterback position. So I don't know where his ceiling is, but Malik Willis has broken barriers since coming to Green Bay at the beginning of the season last year. And what I mean by that is he has already exceeded many people's expectations for how good he could be as a backup. I'd love to see him starting somewhere because I think he deserves the opportunity.
Heck, maybe Matt LaFleur is coaching Malik Willis next year somewhere else. I'm just going to throw that in there like a grenade and step out of here. We appreciate everybody. I'm not saying that should happen or will happen. It was just a random thought I had, and I let my intrusive thoughts win there for a second. We appreciate everybody for listening in this year, 2025. This is not a seasonal podcast. This is a year-long podcast. So we're going to be here through the end of the season, throughout the entire off season. We appreciate everyone for listening, following along. Remember to follow us, like us, subscribe on all socials, on YouTube. We're going to be back next week for another episode previewing a Green Bay Packers playoff game. Playoff football, there is no better time, John Kuhn. So for John Kuhn, Packers legend, I'm Matt Schneidman of The Athletic. We appreciate everybody for listening.